Welcome, everybody, to OK Everyday, a podcast about TA or transactional analysis, where Jason and I continue diving into how to make our lives okay every day. Hey, Jason.
Hey, Ollie.
And today we're continuing our drivers segment of season three. I had to put that in there. Sorry, Jason, but it's season three. It just feels good. So we're continuing our drivers, and today we're talking about
The try-hard driver.
the try hard driver.
Mm.
So last episode we talked about Be Perfect, a very heavy driver, uh, and today we're talking about Try Hard. Also sounds kind of heavy. So
Yes.
so where do we start?
Yeah. And you and I got to make sure we don't try too hard in this
Oh,
episode.
I think I'm already sweating. It's like
We got to get it right, Ollie. We got to get it right. Yeah. So the try-hard, both of them, in a way, they're connected but different.
right.
But at the end of the day, they can cause stress, undue
Mm,
stress, which we'll talk about. But there are pros and cons, just like the Be Perfect. There is some
right.
some elements of that are useful, and same with the try hard. But they are different. So, one of the questions people ask is, well, how are they different? You know what I mean? Because they sound kind of
Mm.
similar in some way, stressful. So the Be Perfect driver pretty much is very much focused on outcomes.
Right.
That's the main thing. Oh, I got to win. We got to win this. Everybody got to win. So it's very much
Mm,
focused on the outcome, which to some level is okay. But when there's a bit of an obsession about the outcome,
right.
like we have to win, and if we don't, we're failures. Oh no, that's not good. Stop, pull back, right? The try hard is not so focused on the outcome, and this is one of the issues with it. It's much
Hmm.
more focused on the process and what's
Right.
going on, in relation to the process, whatever the work they're doing or a person might be doing. They're so focused on the work, they're losing
Hmm.
sight of the outcome, and they might spend way too much time doing something that could be an awful lot quicker to do.
Hmm.
They're dragging their heels. Like you hear that phrase, paralysis by analysis.
Yes.
I mean, that's a real try hard driver kicking in there because they can't make a decision. They're just so focused on
Hmm.
this is hard. We got to get it right. And we can't make a mistake. And this kind of stuff. That they take much longer than is actually necessary, and they can get in the way and cause again an awful lot of stress, which I'm sure we will talk about.
We will talk about the stress. I mean, you know what I'm also curious about because we did mention the drivers last episode, but before we dive into try hard,
Mm.
before we try hard to dive into try hard, how do they all connect? So
Oh,
maybe a
great.
recap.
Yeah,
You know?
great. So where did the drivers come from?
Yeah.
Really is kind of a good recap. So obviously our childhood, right?
Ooh.
So this is messages that we get when we're younger, right? And we all have, again, there's five drivers. We all have all five in us that kind of work away at times, but we have a couple that are a little bit more predominant.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the messages we got either from our parents, from teachers, from authority figures,
Mm-hmm.
um, that kind of get in there at an early age, because we
Right.
have to learn how to get on, and these messages get in there, and they're like kind of early coding or early software, and
Mm-hmm.
then we build on them throughout life,
Right.
to try and kind of either achieve results or get on, or in sometimes the idea of being successful.
Right.
How do you be successful? Well, these drivers are supposed to get you to success. But if we haven't slowed down and think about what is success, then we are driving sometimes in the wrong way,
Mm.
or we're driving some stuff that really we don't won't make us happy, for example. Do you know what I mean? That
Wow.
we're putting a lot of stress and energy into it. And all of these five kind of we can connect with, and they become quite obvious when you say them. But what we're going to do a little bit today, Ollie, is kind of how do they play out in
Yes.
life, and when can you kind of um, intervene to
Mm-hmm.
help yourself, not just kind of be repeating that old software,
Yes.
because to a degree it's outdated.
Right.
So how do you update your drivers with the type of things you want to invest in? Where do you want to put your energy? And kind of bring in a little bit more depth and understanding. If we bring in a bit of TA through the adult ego state.
Right.
So it's through the
Wow.
adult ego state that we make more up-to-date decisions about how we want to be in the world. Whereas the drivers, they're very much in our child ego state. That's what's being
Mm.
pinged is our child ego state because the parent messages have told us, do this, do this.
Right. Wow. I mean, it's building from last episode. I think now it's become a lot more clearer to me that the drivers are not necessarily, as a lot of things in TA, they're not
Yeah.
necessarily bad,
Nope.
but a balance between how to use them efficiently and not too much. That's what's important to get. And what I'm also hearing is that um, your adult ego state is the one that can help you get the right balance for any driver that we're working on. So be it today we're going to look at try hard and we're going to not we're going to try no, we're not going to try. We're going to look into we're going to dive into try hard and see we've got some examples of great characters that
Mm-hmm.
also
Mm-hmm.
resemble what try hard looks like. We've got some examples from workplaces, how it can manifest itself. So we've got quite a few things lined up. Is there anything else before we go into the characters that you'd like to share about try hard?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit because a bit on the adult, as you were saying there, Ollie. Being it's a good that's a good place for us to make decisions because it's much
Right,
more balanced,
right.
right? So often we're making decisions from our child ego state.
Mm.
Uh, and the problem there is it's old info that we're working on, and therefore, and has to do with the drivers. We feel like we have to.
Right.
So when the driver's behavior starts to get a bit out of control, it feels like, oh, we have to, I have to do this, I have to do this,
Mm.
right? Because that's the way child's mind works. Whereas the adult will say, no, no, I don't have to do this. You know, nobody's forcing me to do this. So the adult is much better filter
Yeah.
and can calm down some of the feelings and calm down some of the thoughts, and then be our, what we call kind of authentic, autonomous self. You
Mm.
know, who am I now, and how do I want to be in work, in relationships, even with sports?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the try hard driver shows up in sports. You know,
Well, I can actually bring in a jujitsu reference because
oh,
putting it in there every now and then. Um, so when I'd be sparring with someone from my club or even an open mats, but there's always a few people who you'd see their teeth clench,
mm,
as they'd go really hard. I mean, they could go hard and win, yes, and sometimes that does happen, but sometimes they go hard and that doesn't benefit them. So they get so tense that it's easier for me, for example, to spar with them just by using their trying hard too much,
absolutely.
And it just resonated a lot when you said that.
That's a great example because the try hard driver does show up in our body. Right, it
Mm,
makes us tense. You
hmm
think about that person and their teeth; they're not doing their teeth much good because they're grinding them. Do you know what I mean? And your example there is brilliant because you can use your training to off balance them because already they're off
Right.
balanced because they're going in too hard. You
hmm
know, sometimes that might pay off. But sometimes they might get hurt, right? Because
Right.
they're so focused, so tense that they're forgetting their training to a certain degree.
Mm,
And how to use it. So that's a brilliant example. And I worked a lot in sports and rugby, and you could see some of the guys at times are going. Their try hard was they were going in too hard in a tackle and forgetting the technique,
right.
and that's really dangerous, and they get hurt. Yeah, or they'll
Mm,
hurt the other person. But so it's like utilizing our resources well because you can still
right.
tackle and hit hard. But if the try hard is going in, actually you're starting to get a bit imbalanced in some way. And of course, this shows up also in the workplace, right? But yeah, we
True.
got some great examples. Great
Oh
examples,
yeah.
I think.
Oh, we've got some really good examples, I think, and I agree with you there. So, do you want to kick us off, or do you want me to kick off?
Actually, I'm going to, like yourself, using a personal example. I'm going to use a personal example as well,
Ooh,
first and foremost, actually, because I touched on this in my book.
uh-huh.
So about the try hard, because that's one that I recognize I have.
Oh.
Even with all my training and all my experience, I can still slip into it. you know, because I'm human, right? So
Really?
I believe the last time I checked, an exceptionally nice human, but still human. But
Uh,
what I noticed when I was writing about it, I thought, okay, what are the examples that come up for me? And in the book, I
mm,
talk about there was a time where DIY would intimidate me, and still
okay.
does to a certain degree. Do you know what I mean? Because I wasn't brought up like that. I wasn't brought up in a family where you pick up a hammer and or you fix things yourself. No, no, no. You get people in who are trained professionals, right?
Mm,
So the older I'm getting, the more relaxed I'm getting with kind of trying some stuff out, right? Now to do that, I have to not worry about making mistakes, right? Because
right.
a try hard driver will make you worry about making mistakes, right?
Hmm.
Because you'll get frustrated, right? Because you
Right.
didn't get it right, right? So I remember a time when I was putting up some pictures, and I love putting up pictures, right? But I remember it was I obviously didn't have the right nail for a start because it was obviously probably mortar or concrete or something I was banging into, and I was, I was banging this nail, and of course the nail wasn't fit for purpose, so it started to bend, right? So what does Jason do? Well, he gets into his try hard driver. I'm going to drive this nail in no matter what. All right,
Oh my
next
God.
thing I have a very bent nail and a couple of holes in the wall.
Mm.
And boy, did I feel good after? No, I did not feel good. I felt terrible
Oh God.
looking at the mess I'd made. Right.
Yep.
Now that's for me, that's a try hard driver happening right there for me in life. Right.
Right.
Because what I should have done was stopped, taken out the nail, got another nail, probably a more appropriate nail, and then tapped away. And hey, presto, be lovely. But oh no, my frustration. This is going in.
That's a great example. And I have one very similar one, but I would, you know what? But a few things came to mind when you shared this example. First, um, what really resonates with the try hard driver and be perfect is the inability or the impossibility of making a mistake. So that
Mm,
both of
mm,
them kind of connect that way. So it's like it's really bad to make a mistake because otherwise you won't be perfect or you won't try hard enough and you'll make a mistake, which is
absolutely.
already bad. The other thing that I had a similar a similar experience, I'd say, where I had to drill a hole for the toilet paper holder in a bathroom, and I thought like, how difficult could it be, right? So I started drilling, and I think I hit concrete, but I hit concrete like 3 or 4 times. So for a long time, I just had four holes in the wall uh, in the bathroom, and no toilet paper holder. So it was, but at the time I felt I was like, should I drill more holes? Should I find another place where to drill this? But this is going to look ridiculous. Why am I going to do that? And but what also came as an example of both of our examples, I think it's also a great way to analyze what's happening and see, okay, you know what? Maybe I should stay. When you said what the adult should have done was
Yes.
taken another nail, and but stepping back is the ultimate kind of value of this situation, if
Yeah.
that's of course possible.
100%. That's the way out of the
Yeah.
try hard driver. Because in both our examples, we were stuck in the process.
Oh.
We were just focused on getting this nail in, uh, doing the same process. We didn't change our process.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I didn't change the nail. You didn't step back and think about, oh, actually, is this the right drill bit? What is this concrete? Hang on, should I do a bit of research first? Oh no, and it's like, oh, isn't that look great? Not.
But you know what? We also have a few examples of people who
Yes.
are the same, stuck in processes.
Yeah.
So who would you like to start with, Jason?
Well, actually, I'll start with, and again, these are characters,
Yes,
that, and the listeners or the viewers, if you watch TV later on tonight, you'll see in all movies and series and stuff, you'll see people who are kind of stuck in their try hard driver. They're pushing
very
too
true.
hard. They're pushing too hard, right? And one that came to mind for me, and there's a great scene of this. So Kylo Ren,
Ooh.
I'm a big Star Wars fan. So Kylo Ren, and like that guy, he's full attention. He's like he's not a relaxed fella,
No, he's not.
um, and he's so determined to kind of get what he wants, right? That he just loses it. I don't know if you remember there was a scene where, and I kind of nearly roared laughing at this, watching it the first time it came out, where he takes his lightsaber and he just destroys a room with his lightsaber. He gets so frustrated that things aren't going his way. He wrecks it. And a couple of the guards who were standing there kind of step away and walk out. It's like, this guy's losing it. But that's, to me, that's a good example of when the try hard driver has gone wrong.
Wow.
You know, you're pushing too hard one way and you kind of lose, you get frustrated, get irritable. So good old Kylo Ren. What about
Good,
yourself? Did you have any Ollie?
good old Kylo Ren. You know what? One of the first characters that came to mind was, and this is a character from a long time ago, so I don't remember a lot about the character, but it's a cartoon character, and it's Wile E. Coyote. So the one who's chasing a bird, an
Yeah,
ostrich, I believe, right?
Roadrunner. It's
Roadrunner, Roadrunner.
Roadrunner. Yep.
He's chasing Roadrunner, and for the love of everything, I don't remember why he's chasing them. You know, I'm assuming to feed and to eat.
Bizarrely, yes, to eat. However, it being a cartoon, he can get loads of food because he does for the
Exactly,
Roadrunner. He's determined
exactly.
to get this Roadrunner.
But the amount of times that he's trying to catch the Roadrunner with every possible physical, mental manipulation, and it never works. I don't think it ever worked. I
It
don't
always
remember it
backfires
working,
on him.
and
Always
it,
backfires.
it always backfires. And I think it kind of reminds me of metaphorically of the scene with Kylo Ren and slashing the room.
Yeah.
It kind of backfires. It never works well the
No,
way
and
when you
he always ends up hurt.
yeah
Always ends up hurt. I love
in a
Wile
funny
E.
way.
Coyote. Yeah, absolutely. Because he has a business card that says Wile E. Coyote, super genius. And of course he's not, because he just keeps on doing this try hard job.
I can counter that. He's a
Oh,
super genius at the try hard driver.
that's bingo.
Yeah,
Spot on. You know,
there we
now
go.
the interesting, there is a part of the try hard driver you could argue is determination,
Oh yeah.
right? So he has determination, but it's misplaced. That's the problem there. Do you know what I mean?
But
That's yeah.
I also think that that's why when I was thinking about Wild E. Coyote, it's about the why. I mean, I get it. It's a coyote running after prey. Okay. But I don't even if the cartoon you don't really understand why he's after that roadrunner, So it's like
I don't think he does anymore.
it's more of just for the sake of it rather than anything else.
Yeah, and it's again, determination is a great thing when it's channeled well, but
Yeah,
when
true.
people get obsessive, which is can happen with the try hard drive, when you get obsessive about a few things, you get stuck in the process. Like
Mm.
he's just determined to try and get this roadrunner, which he never does, but he never stops. Right, always ends up, kind of destroying himself in some way or wrecking something. And
Oh, true.
a phrase came up when we were talking about this.
Mm.
He can't see the woods for the trees.
No,
He's
no.
so deep down in it, he's not realizing, why am I doing this? And is it worthwhile? And I've been doing this for decades.
To be fair, he gave a lot of people jobs, but thank
And enjoyment as
and
kids.
enjoyment.
I used to love it. But yeah, it just shows you how, we can get stuck in these things, and
True.
they can push us in a way that doesn't help. But
Mm.
sometimes, with a little bit of determination, that can be helpful.
Right.
Through the adult ego state, not the child
Mm.
ego state. That's where it kind of gets stuck. Do you have any more?
I have one more. It's one more, and it's also a cartoon, and
Uh-huh.
it's one of my favorite cartoons ever because I love cartoons, first of all, and second of all, they can talk about it's like TA, it's a very
Mm,
cartoons are like TA. That's a quote that I'm going to put on a t-shirt one day,
fantastic.
because it shows you very complex things in a very playful manner, and I love it, And this specific movie, when it came out, I think I watched it 5 or 6 times. It's called Inside Out, and
Very
the
funny.
the character that we talked about that the kind of that resembles the Try Hard Driver is actually the happiness. So happiness, which is ironic because it shouldn't be focused on trying hard.
No,
Happiness is nothing about trying hard, but she's so fixated on trying hard to give the best childhood, the most ideal, perfect childhood to her host. That's the main thing for her, and she's trying so hard to the extent that she can't even see the problems piling up.
Yeah,
and she can't see that, other emotions also need attention. They also need to go through. It's not only about happiness, but it's about the mix of all of them going together. But I would argue that in that cartoon, at the end, they actually got all of them got into their
that's right.
adult ego state
Yeah,
and understood how to progress forward.
I totally agree. Totally. And it's a great example. And it's a real life example because people can
Hmm.
try hard with this idea that, oh, we got to have the best life, or you got to make sure everything is done just right for
Right.
the kids and stuff like that. It's like, well, no, that's not actually how life works.
Mm.
We need to fail sometimes, or make mistakes, or get hurt, or whatever it might be. That's part of life. So
Yeah.
if we're trying hard to overly protect, in this
Hmm.
case, that's not going to help. That's going to
Nope.
backfire because then the child won't build resilience or inner sense of self, what it's like to deal with challenges, right? So it's coming from a
Right.
good place, but it's going too far,
Yeah.
So that's a brilliant one, and I totally agree with you. Like, happiness in that movie is ignoring things, intentionally kind of blinkers on, not wanting to accept.
Hmm.
In this case, I think a sadness is part of kind of uh, a healthy life, a rounded life, And then when the penny drops, the try hard driver kind of loosens up, and
Mm.
she gets it. So that's a great one. Again, I love cartoons as well, and I had a few that were a little bit back in my time, which is for those of you of a similar age, there was Daffy Duck and Elmer Fudd. They were two really kind of,
Mm.
they were always, again, trying to get the rabbit. They were trying so hard to get Bugs Bunny, and it
True, true.
always failed, and I always got hurt, and they always made a fool out of themselves. Like, if you think about Daffy Duck, but they didn't give up. But it was like, this is not working, much to our enjoyment. But it's the frustration that they
Not
would
working
show,
at all.
those two. But then I did have a human character, which is an interesting one. Um, Hermione Granger,
Right.
yeah, from
Harry Potter
Harry
fans, Harry
Potter,
Potter
yeah.
fans.
And people might think, well, hang on, what's going on there? Because she's very successful, and she is very, very intelligent character, right? But at times she'd get really, really frustrated because she was pushing, she was trying too hard, either to please others, or to
Mm.
fit in, or to get the question right. That kind of way
Right.
in class. And you can see, I think it was Snape. The teacher would constantly ignore her because she was the one who had her hand up
Just the only
every
one.
time. Now, how lovely is that? Because that's coming from the adapted child. She really wants to please and stuff like that. But she was trying too hard. And then it would
Mm.
kind of work against her, where
Mm.
her self-esteem would take a bit of a bash,
Right.
So she was very determined, very smart, and had brilliant, brilliant things to her character. But sometimes she would just kind of storm away, in frustration. Especially with
Wow.
Ron, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Ron, can you be more like me? It's like,
And then she took out frustration on everyone else as well.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, you should be
sometimes,
more
yeah,
like me, even though something's not
yeah,
working.
yeah. Why don't you read more, Ron? Come on,
But this kind of reminded me of an example that I had when I was in uni. So in university,
Huh.
I had a lecturer, a teacher. The subject was history of Ukraine, so it's something that I would be
Mm,
interested in generally. But he delivered it so well that I really wanted to get an excellent mark.
mm,
And
mm.
I tried really, really. I didn't get it at the end, but I remember this feeling of trying so hard. I was always in the front row, always kind of,
Mm.
my hand up and trying as hard as I could. Essentially, kind of, it didn't work out, which I think at that time was a good learning for myself. It's not about the outcome. It shouldn't be only about the outcome, but I remember I didn't really enjoy the process that much as well because
Yeah,
I was so fixated on getting things right versus learning, which
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
wasn't the idea.
yeah, and that's a great example because it's a bit unfortunate because you really liked his classes. Do you know what I mean? So there's an enjoyment in there that could have accentuated, had more enjoyment,
True.
but the try hard was, kind of kicking in a bit. And you see this very, very much with young people doing big exams.
Mm,
In Ireland, we have the leaving cert, which is the final exam before you leave school. And there's lots of kids who really, really suffer from the pressure they're putting on
mm,
themselves, right? Even though the parents might say, look, don't. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. You'll be okay. No, it's like this try hard driver can kick in and they get
Right.
stuck in the process of trying hard,
Hmm.
and wanting to do really well or please somebody or trying to do something somewhere. So these drivers kick in together, and try hard is one that you'll know because you'll be getting frustrated or anxious. That's how
Sounds
you'll
like
know.
sounds like it. And you know what? We've reviewed five different characters, which is
Mm.
quite a few. So Kylo Ren, Wile E. Coyote, Mrs. Granger. I'm not gonna butcher her
Hermione,
name.
Hermione.
Thank you very much for that. Happiness from Inside Out, and Daffy Duck and Elmer Fudd. So that's actually six characters.
Yeah,
Uh, and so and if by the way, viewers and listeners, if you connect with some of these or you've recognized a try hard driver, share something in the comments. How does that manifest in your life? Because we all have them. We all have them. And don't try to tell me you don't have them. You have them.
yeah. What about showing up in work, Ollie? Like this is where a lot of this can
Oh,
come kind of come out to play.
that's a very good segue towards it. I think the try hard driver, there's a few ways it manifests at work, how it shows up. First of all, and I can relate to this a lot of the time, it's starting but not finishing. So you try hard, you try to climb to a project, but it's very difficult to finish because you're focused on the process, not the outcome, and the outcome doesn't matter. You get, as you mentioned, you're focused on the trees, not the forest, right? So you're
Mm,
focused on the small things that don't really, they may tie together at some point, but they don't give you the whole picture.
mm, mm.
Second, I think comes out of the first one as well. It's doing complex or simple task in a very complex way. So instead of doing something, yeah, it's easily done, just, very simple task, you find ways to make it very, very complex and maybe even longer, kind of extend the deadline. I think one thing we talked about as well is going around in circles and you kind of you end up in the same in the same place all the time. And it's interesting that, for example, even you see that in language showing up in language. So
Yeah.
whenever someone would say, "I'll try to get it done" versus "I will get it done,"
Hmm.
and maybe that's an indicator, try hard. Oh, well, it does sound kind of similar, doesn't? So whenever you'd say something, or any one of us would say, "I tried to do something," maybe that's already a signal that you're already in the try hard driver.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think?
I totally agree. Language does give it away for sure.
Mm,
Um, and sometimes people might say, oh, well, I tried. Well, hang on a second. There was probably other things you could have done towards a better solution.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, don't give out to me. I tried anyway. I tried.
And there was one character from the Star Wars as well who said something
Oh,
about
okay.
trying,
Well,
didn't
okay. Okay. I think you're referencing Yoda.
he?
Very, very wise, wise little person, Yoda. So
Am
Yoda's
I indeed? Yes.
so what Yoda said is, no, try not, do or do not. There is no try. That's probably the best. See,
Brilliant impression.
I didn't try too hard at the impression there. If I I
So
just
you
went
did
with it.
you didn't try hard, and that was a perfect impression. There
Oh,
you go.
lovely, lovely. But
That's
it's
very
again,
impressive.
language is really interesting because we were just talking about and your examples there about work are spot on. But we were just talking about Bugs Bunny, right? By chance, we were talking about Bugs Bunny, and what struck me just a moment ago is another thing that can happen with the try hard driver is we can go down a rabbit hole.
Mm,
We can just go down a hole that we're just going down and down and down, and we're not getting anywhere. Do you know
no.
what I mean? We're just digging and digging and digging, and we've lost sight of actually why did I start this hole in the first place? What was I trying to achieve? Yes.
Where am I? You know,
I'm totally lost in this project. I
it's,
don't know what we're trying to achieve, but I'm exhausted because
it's
I've been
not like
trying so hard.
that Travolta video where he's like, where am I? Where am I exactly? With the coat, with a trench coat. It's like, what's happening? Where am I? I mean, but that is the case, and I think when we build upon last episode's Be Perfect and this episode Try Hard,
Mm.
they both lead. The disbalance use of both of them lead to stress, a lot of stress, and eventually burnout. And I think that's applicable both in the workspace, but not only. So it's not exclusive only to the workplace. It's everywhere because we can drive ourselves to burnout even preparing to a driving test exam.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the thing.
Yeah, and a good, I mean, another version of thinking about it, instead of try hard, am I pushing too hard?
Mm,
Because I might be pushing too hard um, in whatever it is that's upsetting me, and that includes personal relationships. So if
right.
I'm in a fight, I might be pushing too hard in a fight because I want to win, because I want to beat you. It's like, well, how's that going to help? You
Hmm.
know? So whenever we feel like we're pushing too hard or trying too hard or getting kind of caught up in it, that's an indicator it's
Right.
active. And the way out is to step back, right?
Wow.
Kind of move away from it. Take your time, figure out, is this the only option? What am I trying to do here? And is
Mm,
this really working?
mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm. So it's like the two sides of the coin of try hard is kind of, are you pushing too hard
Hmm.
from one side, and the second is, or the other side is determination. So you do have that energy, that maybe physis to some
Yes,
extent, that
absolutely.
physis to actually go and get things done
Yeah.
versus, but not pushing it too hard so that you don't end up in
Yeah. So sometimes it's like take a pause and regroup and see, is this what I want to be achieving,
right,
or have I gone
right,
off track? And again, teams can do that in work. Sometimes the manager might be kind of pushing a bit too hard one way, and the team can see a better solution. So
right.
the manager may need to kind of relax a bit and open up and listen to the team
Mm,
and say, yeah, okay, yeah, we might let go of that, or we might make some decisions and
very true.
change tack.
Very true. So listen, we're 31 minutes in. How
Yeah.
do you think we've progressed with well, I don't think we tried too hard.
I don't think we
So
tried
we,
too
we
hard.
were very determined. How did we progress with the try hard driver today?
Well, do you know one of the clues as to why we didn't try too hard is that
Mm.
we had some fun, right? When you're trying too hard, it's not fun at all, right?
No,
So I
no.
think we did a pretty good balanced description of the try hard driver in conjunction with the be perfect driver and getting into our adult and not getting caught up on our parent child stuff.
Mm. I think it's a great segue to from last episode to this episode, and especially what sparked for me today is finding this balance. So you can use the drivers for both good and not so good, but finding that balance is the key there. So, dear viewers, dear listeners, thank you for being with us on this episode of OK Everyday, where Jason and I talked about the try hard driver. Now, we've got three drivers left, right? It's hurry up, it's please people, it's be strong. Which one would you like to hear about next?
Oh, that's a good one. I think probably please others or please people because it follows on from the try hard because they're
Mm,
strongly connected.
hmm. And the hurry up we'll do in 5 minutes, right? So we'll have
Oh
five
yeah,
minutes of.
have we not done it?
So, dear viewers, dear listeners, did you like this video? If you did, please press the like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, subscribe to our channel. And if you're interested in TA content, again, subscribe to the channel because we're posting episodes of OK every day constantly. And new episodes are coming out as we speak. So, with this, we really hope that you stay okay
Every day.
every day.